welcome to the event. Give yourself a round of applause for coming in this kind of weather. My name's Gosh, but that's not important. The important thing is you're here to mingle, to meet people, to do exchanges, to get some money, spend some money, meet new people. We're gonna have a couple of speakers. This is the, I think, 7th event, I think. And it's a great event. There's more and more people each time, and that's welcoming. I'm probably the only one who hasn't invested in anything here, but I'm here to learn. So I would like to, first and foremost, thank you all for coming and invite the first speakers, the people who made this possible. So give a big round of applause from the Blockchain Association, Klemen, Rupnik and Gregor, Treska. And then from Unlawcked, Marina, Markežič and Anja Blaj, please.
Hi. Hi to all. Welcome to another Slovenian Blockchain Association event.
Just 1 second. This is important notice. So we are now officially Slovenian Blockchain Association. So, and yeah.
Thank you. So I'm glad that we're hosting DAO experts today. You'll learn something from them, hopefully. Please enjoy the event and thank you for coming.
So welcome to all of you, especially for our friends from Croatia. We actually have Croatian blockchain experts here. So be sure to mingle. From Berlin came today just because of the meetup. And I can tell you that those people are really extraordinary because they live they actually live the DAO life. They don't just work in DAOs, but they live it. And you will hear more from them. And please take, talk to them and ask them all the questions possible because they're like super knowledgeable.
I mean, these guys said everything, so. But yeah, a warm welcome to everybody. And thank you again for coming from Berlin all the way to here, to Slovenia. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope that there's going to be a crazy after party after this. So let's hope, enjoy it.
One more thing, here are still some seats in front, so you're welcome to occupy them.
Thanks. Cool. Okay. So it's time for our first speaker. Well, second one actually. A very talented man, extremely talented person, an artist, designer, a facilitator from DaoStack, Felipe Duarte. This is what's the correct way of pronouncing Duarte? Oh, I'm sorry. So here you go.
All right, guys. I'm gonna have to make some time while my computer is getting put on there. So I'm very happy to be here with these people in this context. It's like a story of friendship that keeps developing meetup after meetup in different countries. Sort of like a little bit like a dream in a weird way. It keeps like we keep running into each other. Daniel and I live in Berlin, but we never see each other in Berlin. We see each other all over in different meetups and different events. The password is the name. Yeah, it's fine. Just hack all my things. Boom. All right, let's do this. And let's just press play. Play now. Play. All right. So my talk today is called "Agency Comes of Age." All right. So can you just make sure that it goes and then press play? So why is it agency comes of age, right? is everybody here sort of familiar with what a DAO is? All right. So, okay, cool. So you have to be kind of like a rapper about this one, all right? So everybody's familiar with what a DAO is. You sort of come, you make proposals, you do your best. Yeah, there was a show of hands, but then I had to put the microphone in my beard. I'm just trying to make time because technical difficulties, but I think it's going to pay off. I'm trying to do a very visual presentation that has, which my main goal is to give the sensation of what a DAO life is. I feel that for a lot of people outside of our little clique of people that actually serve, like the DAO was my job. I'm going to tell you the story about how I joined blockchain in general. I never heard about blockchain, and I'm a facilitator and activist from Brazil who had my black bloc days, broke a few bank windows, had to dodge gas grenades and rubber bullets, and how I ended up in the blockchain space. So that's kind of the story that we're going to tell today. Do you think that's an interesting story, or? Okay, just checking. Yes. Boom. Now this works. No. Shit. Second one. All right. So agency comes of age. I think over the last 60,000 years, we revolutionized every technical aspect of what it means to be human. But there's one specific innovation that has gone missing over all of these history of human development, which is how we make decisions and organize in a giant scale. So for many years in my activism, I felt that there has never been a revolution. We had 1%, 15%, and the rest, the groups of people changed, but the structure never changed. And DAOs contain a small promise of change in this organization, and this is what I want to talk to you about today. So what does it mean to have a DAO for a boss? Right? I'm an immigrant, in case you didn't notice. And it's kind of hard to be an immigrant anywhere in any circumstance, not because of only racism or prejudice, but just because it's hard in general to not understand the symbols and the signals around you. Hello. All right, I'll talk louder. It's all right. I'm also trained in theater, I guess. It's actually true. So after trying a lot to break into the digital, social innovation and facilitation, coaching, etc. in Berlin, I found Genesis Alpha. Genesis Alpha is DaoStack's first DAO, where you can actually go now live and make a proposal for, hey, I want to get this much money to get this done. And if people agree that you should be the person to do it and agree with how much you charged, you're going to get that money, right? That's pretty much how we helped put this meetup together and how I paid my life for about 4 months before I got hired by DaoStack, right? So this is a reality. This is not a theoretical possibility anymore. The DAO, which was a collective fund, is very different from the DAOs we have operating today. And I'm the living proof that it's not bullshit. If you join an ecosystem, you find a problem you know how to solve, and you say, hey, I want to solve this problem, you're going to get paid for it. And this is already a giant revolution on how we see and do work relationships in general. I've made money to do videos for DaoStack. I've made money to make a portrait of Vitalik that we raffled online. I've made money to do the framework that we now use to make DAOs, the DAO Canvas. I've made money to run workshops and to run workshops with Daniel that now works for Aragon. So the way that we relate and interrelate is changing rapidly because of this technology, right? So just in case you've never seen the operation of Alchemy, this is just to make sure that you know how it looks like and that you can go there. So if you go to alchemy.daostack.io, this is what you're going to see when you try to write your first proposal. So proposals are the basis of every movement. All the money you're going to make, all the reputation you're going to get, everything that gets built starts with somebody saying, hey, here's my proposal. So writing proposals is a skill set we're going to have to build, right? This is how it looks. Proposals accumulate. Proposals are born here. And they are never going to pass probably. They need 51% of votes to pass. Then you have to bet a little bit of actual money on it with the token that we call Gen. Does anybody know what Gen is? Raise your hands, because so Gen is the native token of DaoStack that we use to make predictions. It's a prediction market. Everybody knows what a prediction market is? Cool. So the way, what we call holographic consensus in a very crude explanation is the interaction of a voting mechanism with a prediction mechanism. The voting mechanism, we use our reputation. So me, Felipe, my wallet has a certain reputation that I cannot send to anyone. It's bound to that wallet that's bound to me. And if I try to sell that wallet and people notice, it's easy peasy for the DAO to slash my reputation, right? So that's how I make decisions. I vote on things, and only people with reputation can vote. But what decides if a proposal makes their way all the way up here is if people stake Gen, if people make bets and predictions. And the cool thing about the DaoStack protocol, which I think is the most special thing that we call holographic consensus, is that anyone can bet. Anyone. You don't have to hold reputation in the DAO. So if you know what's going on, you know that's a good thing that should be done, you can take part and bet, even if you don't have any reputation of the DAO. Does this make a little bit clearer how the DAO works? Had anybody never seen this before, had no idea? Raise your hands. Everybody had seen this before? No. Okay, cool. So make sure you put in your notebook or something, alchemy.daostack.io. It's open there. There's about 9 DAOs live that you can do. So a little bit less practical. Let's try to understand what is a DAO. What is a DAO, right? Everybody knows DAO, decentralized autonomous organizations. Do you guys think that's a good name or a bad name? Bad name? Give me hands for bad name. Give me hands for good name. All right, I don't like that name. I think it's at least an imprecise name, or it's at least a name that we should think about, or at least is worthy of a guy trying to make you realize why it could be interpreted as a bad name. And that's what I'm going to do now. Yeah, maybe. So this is a tentative breakdown with a few grains of salt of DAO, right? Let's start with D for debate, right? Because is decentralization, true decentralization, absolute decentralization even possible? Do we have a decentralized system running right now anywhere? No, we don't, right? Because no system stands alone. So even if you manage to create a certain nudge, a sort of corner, a sort of nook and a cranny of decentralization, there is a systems within systems within systems, right? So decentralized, sure. What about autonomous? Is anything truly, absolutely autonomous? Is that even possible? Or does it actually mean automated? Because in the original proposal, it meant automated. And it wasn't that big. It was just that we have smart contracts and self-actuating decisions, right? But then people like me, the sharing economy, annoying people with political science bullshit, comes and put a lot of ideology into it, you know? So even automated or autonomous, none of them are likely to be 100% true. Do you follow me? Does it make sense? Right, so automated is complicated. Organization should stand, right? Organization, we know what our organization is. I'm not so sure, actually. I'm really not so sure, because it's organizations within organizations within organizations where you don't really know where the edge is, creating organisms and stuff even our notion of an organizational boundary, where one thing starts and where the other one ends, and my belonging to an organization is at stake in this change, in this paradigm shift. And this is, I feel, the best part of my job is to see people realize this, that DAOs are not just companies on the blockchain, right? They can be, but they're not just. It's a new kind of fire that we're stealing from the gods. It's the innovation that has been gone missing for 60,000 years. It's the potential of people truly making decisions together in a way that they're legitimate, accountable, shareable, reproducible, forkable. It's fucking amazing. We're going to hear from Peter later about Metacartel. I'm not going to spoil it. So we've entered officially the age of participation. We're talking about the participant, contributor experience instead of user experience, right? So instead of UX, we're talking about CX, because we are building together whatever the fuck we are users of. So it's open source on steroids, and we can actually get paid, and you can actually get credit. And we have Pundo, we have several people trying to do the decentralized Git. It's everywhere. So an update is required. There's something that has to change in the way we see things in our heads, in the way that we understand what it means to be a person with other people, acting inside groups, acting in a protocol acting in a society, right? And the thing is, any percent, even though I shat on decentralization, I shat on autonomy or automation, and I shat on organizations, I do believe that any percentage in the direction of decentralization that we gain, any percentage that we gain in the direction of automation or autonomy, and any percentage that we gain in the direction of organisms instead of organizations is a fucking revolution of Promethean scale. Everybody knows the myth of Prometheus, right? The fire stolen from the gods and given to the people. He's the father of humanity. Before Prometheus, we were barely just animals. So, guess what? Prometheus hasn't happened yet. We are the fucking Prometheus swarm, right? So that's the message I have to say. Because we are juggling jurisdictions and entangling systems. And so this yellow cut is what we see. But we have a four-dimensional phenomena developing over time that is a strange attractor. That's actually a 3D representation of a chaotic system. It's a pretty cool way to see it. And it's very much, we are all blind touching an elephant. And some of us touch the husk and we say, it's cold and it's smooth. And some of us touch the tail and say, it's furry and spiky. And some of us touch the ear and goes like, ooh, it's wobbly and but we're all describing the same thing. The phenomena is unseen. The wholeness of the phenomena remains unseen, right? I should just say Libra and like walk off stage or something. So the future is partly shackled or in hiding because the whole of the phenomena remains unseen. So before you get angry at the Bitcoin maximalist next to you, just chill. We're all just like trying to understand the elephant. It's all good, you know? And once we do break all of these tiny walls and we allow smart contracts to talk to dumb contracts and the jurisdictions learn how to talk to each other because of the beautiful work of people like these two, or us or him or all of us, all the tiny walls that we're all obsessively trying to put down, then there will be use cases ablaze. And one by one, these walls will fall. And all I want to say is, let's work on the update, right? The challenge that we have now is a challenge of vision and imagination. That's what I feel. It's to re-understand what families are in a decentralized world, understand what companies are. And some people are way ahead living this life, and some people are just like, no man, I'm just trying to see what's gonna moon. I'm just trading here, shut up, you know? Just trying to have a couple of kids. I don't know, you know? But we need to have these conversations that are a bit more pervasive. They're technical, but not only technology technical. They're consciousness technical. They are love technical. They are team building technical. You know, these are hard conversations because dealing with exponential possibilities while trapped inside a linear brain is taxing. It's not easy. So we want to know, like, who's going to be ready when critical mass hits? And it might be faster than we think, because I really feel that today is the year 2000. And we're trying to talk about smartphones. That's the feeling I have right now, right? It's the year 2000, and we're already like, we're the small group of people that are trying to talk about smartphones. So the update for me has these 4 levels. And that's the project that turned me from a pollinator, from a random dude in the DAO proposing stuff, to part of DaoStack staff. It's this book. You guys can go daostack.io/ebook and download it for free. And it's separated in 4 chapters. These 4 chapters deal with the society level update, with the protocol level update, with the group level update, and the personal level update. Divided in 4 chapters that I really like. I've made a little poem. They're the name of the chapters. It's Agency Comes of Age. No, Under the Wide Sky, Agency Comes of Age, feathered together by doers and deeds. Right? It's people like us doing stuff. It becomes this crazy, super organism. That's what we're seeing. And we're collecting aha moments. We're living our lives, going about having experiences, living our little professional, our experiences, affairs, love experiences, friendship experiences, all these experiences together in this baggage of decentralized life that is probably for all of us not more than 5 years old, which is like nothing, right? And we're collecting these aha moments. So I urge you guys to seek these experiences and go to uncomfortable situations, because articles are great. The book is going to really like open up a bunch of doors, especially if you like get your favorite article and look at all the references and go after the references, because each of those people in that book are a master in a certain direction. It's fantastic. It was an incredible privilege to go research all these people, annoy them until they wrote for the book. It was the best thing I've ever done, and I dearly recommend the book. But articles are not enough at all, right? So I urge you guys to go and join Genesis enough that you experience holographic consensus so you can understand and explain it. You don't have to become a DaoStack fan. You don't even have to like DaoStack. You don't even have to do anything. I just want you to understand holographic consensus. It's like a homework sort of a thing, right? Because that's the vision that we have for DaoStack DAOs. They should be hyper scalable, resilient, and relevant, right? It's not the same as some of the other DAO groups or companies that have out there. We have sort of a creative limitation. We want to be able to put 500,000 people in the same governance process and have that governance process make good decisions. That is a pretty big challenge. That is the innovation that has gone missing, right? And our bet to do that is holographic consensus, right? So the protocol and the interface are optimized to support decision-making using less attention, not more. Because if you have 500,000 people proposing, who's the motherfucker who's going to read all the proposals? No one, ever. So subgroups of the big group need to be able to make big decisions that are good for the group as a whole. That's all that DaoStack is about. And I recommend you guys to go try to understand it, because I would need a larger presentation. And it still wouldn't work. You need to feel it. You need to see it. You need to see a contended quiet ending at an ATF proposal and really see how it went down. He's laughing here, haha. It was an exciting football match between all the pollinators against DaoStack team. It was great. It was super beautiful to watch. And for us, or for the team, or for me, seeding an ecosystem is bigger than starting a DApp or starting a protocol. It's about truly a group of people in interaction, pollinating and cross-pollinating. Now we have about 9 DAOs. 5 of them I'm going to quickly talk about. And you can launch your own DAO tomorrow, right? So the bet is that this is going to bring about rampant collective intelligence, and it's already happening. The number of the amount of things that have happened since the launch of Genesis Alpha, it's a bit numbing. It's a bit too much. And even I get paid to pay attention to what's happening, and I can't. It's too much. So we specialize, you choose a topic that you like, you follow that closer, you choose your friends, you work with those people. And this is only 300 people. It's going to grow way beyond this. And it's going to grow way beyond this next month with the next 2 DAOs that are going to launch. 4 minutes, 5 minutes, 1 second, I'm almost at the end. 2 more slides. All right. So first thing you should consider doing is join your first DAO. I recommend joining Genesis DAO. Take a picture if you want to read this later, because I don't have time to read it all. This is actually the next 4 slides are the picture slides with links and names and things like this. These are 5 very interesting DAOs. Genesis, you kind of know. Prague DAO is the first DAO to control, or the first DaoStack DAO to control physical space. So if you like Prague, pay attention to Prague DAO. There's a giant 2,000 square meter space that it controls, and it's going to make the decisions, who stays there, etc., etc. So it's really cool. Does anybody know dxDAO? She's going to talk about dxDAO. Polkadot is for Polkadot, and EFXDAO is a grants DAO from the ePhoenix guys. It's a small grants DAO for holders of Nectar. So how do you launch a DAO? I bet there's at least a subset of the people in this room, 5%, they're okay, how the fuck do I launch one of these? You need to have 3 things figured out. If you have these 3 things figured out, we will launch your DAO for free, right? So all you have to do is define, share mission. You have to have resources to be governed. So there's got to be something you're going to govern, and at least some amount of funds, because or else it's just like playing poker with no chips, right? And you have to have the defined initiator group. If you have these things, feel free to be in touch. Get my email, because I will come and annoy you. I'll set up a call between you and the business development team. This is the framework that I invented still as a pollinator before being hired, of how to design your own DAO. It took 6 months for the team to realize what I had invented, right? Nobody, who's this guy? He showed up and fuck him, right? And then only the last month, I think it was used in more than 5 continents or something. It was ridiculous, right? So when things accelerate, they accelerate. So even if you think this sounds really dumb or like a long shot now, I would hedge and at least give this ecosystem of DAOs, all these people that are going to talk today, 8% of your mind share, at least, right? And if you want to take a DAO trip, come to Berlin, 20th of August, just send me go to this link, daofest.io. It's a conference. It's also my current project right now. And we're going to update everybody on all things DAO, 150 people. So if you want to come, RSVP or volunteer, we need some help. Thank you.
Is that, yeah, that's you. Okay, I thought that was mine. Thank you. Thank you. We're gonna do question time later, so we keep on schedule. Did you like it? Yeah, thank God. So much enthusiasm. Well, we're gonna continue with sorry, what? Oh, okay. With Anna George. Is she? Okay, she's here. Are you ready already? Nah. Do you need? Yeah, I have 30 seconds easily. So Anna is not only a leading expert, she's also leading with a good example when it comes to women involved in blockchain. We need a couple of more seconds. We're good? Give a round of applause for Anna.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Working? Yeah? Hello? Oh, perfect. Thank you, Yeah. Damn it. Okay, thank you everyone for being here tonight. It's actually super, super cool to have so many people in the room. That's actually what the team promised us, but it's still amazing to see so many people being gathered up here together. I work for Gnosis, and while we actually work on many different products, we work on prediction markets, we work on a multi-signature wallet, we work on 2 decentralized exchanges. We also collaborated with the DaoStack team to build a DAO around our decentralized exchange. So rather than explaining all the details about our decentralized exchange, I will first start with the DAO and also demo how you can participate. And then we see how much time we have left to explain more about the mechanisms about the decentralized exchange. And you can also ask any questions that you have after the presentation, as well as right after the meetup, and just catch me here. So the dxDAO is one of the products that came out of our collaboration with DaoStack, and it is live. One second. How do I? Oh no, it's on. Oh. Do. Yay! Perfect. Cool. Thanks for waiting. So we actually launched already, and there is a 4 weeks initial period during which reputation is being distributed to everyone who would like to participate. So reputation was just explained in the presentation before by Felipe. It's basically the token that lets you participate in the governance mechanism of a DAO. And so, yeah, right now I'm going to show you the interface where you can participate yourself. But first, let's do a little repetition again. What is the dxDAO? So the dxDAO is a DAO that is governing, for now, at a decentralized exchange, the Dutch X, that was built by Gnosis. However, we believe that if it's possible for this DAO to govern the decentralized exchange, why not govern also any other DeFi product that's out there? So we are currently also talking, or we have been talking to other projects in the space, for instance, to MakerDAO, who are also interested in giving up some parts of their price feed to this DAO. And who gets to govern the dxDAO? Anyone can do it. All of you can participate if you like. Reputation, just a quick brief about what reputation is and what it can do again, even though we just had a quick explanation. It gives you voting power in this DAO, and it's non-transferable, and it allows you to vote on proposals that are being submitted. Everyone can submit proposals. You don't have to hold reputation to do this. But in order to decide on what proposal you would like to go through, you have to hold reputation to vote on it. And the more reputation you hold, the more voting power you get. So, how can you participate? There is always the question of how do you initially distribute reputation, right? Because the question is, if Gnosis is to decide who gets reputation, then it's still, again, a centralized decision that we are making, deciding who's going to govern the DAO. There is no way to make this entirely decentralized, but we wanted to make it as decentralized as possible and have as little decision-taking power in this process as possible of deciding who is going to govern this DAO. So a few parameters, of course, we needed to decide on. One, for instance, what is going to be the initial amount of reputation that is going to be distributed, and that is 1 million. And now this 1 million is distributed during this 4 weeks initial period to everyone who would like to participate. And for this, we are trying a live demo now that I hope is going to work. Always tricky. So let me actually start it from scratch. So, what? You're making fun. So the interface, the web address is dxDAO.DaoStack.io. This is how it looks like. And then all you need to do is click right here to participate. Then it's going to connect your wallet. We all know it always takes a few seconds. Click OK. Oh, here you can actually see how many tokens are currently locked in the contract. And the value of all tokens of people participating in this is currently 18 million US dollars worth of tokens being locked in this contract. And so you scroll down, and then you see that there is 5 different ways how you can obtain reputation during this 4 weeks initial period. And you can either lock ETH, or you can lock ERC20 tokens, or you can participate in Gen bid auctions, or you can register Magnolia. I'm going to explain all of them, and the last one is actually if you do more communications around the dxDAO and you spread the word. But there's only 2% of the initial 1 million reputation going to this category, and it will actually be distributed after the 4 weeks initial period. So we are going to focus on those 4 categories. And again, like it's the final day is next week, the 28th. I think it's the Friday, Thursday or Friday next week. And what you can do is I'm gonna just start with the first category. You can lock ETH. It's super simple. You just click on it. Then you type down the amount of ETH that you would like to lock. Let's say 0.01 ETH. And the number of days you would like to lock it for. Let's say 2 days. And then you click on lock ETH. And then MetaMask is awaiting your approval. Oh, MetaMask. Okay, this seems to be more issue of my computer right now. Oh my. But to not bore you, basically, MetaMask is popping. This is seriously my computer right now. MetaMask is popping up, and then you just need to approve the transaction, and then it pops up down here in the list of amounts you have been staked, and at what point in time you can release it. And so what is happening is basically you put the amount. Thank you. So you decide on how much you want to lock and the amount of time you want to lock it for. Since the vote staking period ends in 8 days and 18 hours, the max time you can currently lock it for is 8 days. And then it really depends on how many other people are participating in this category and how much everyone is participating with. This decides on how much reputation you will get. So again, in total there's 1 million reputation, and 8% of this is given to those people who participate in this category. So that means if you were to be the only person participating in this, and you were only to stake whatever amount, in that case it wouldn't matter how much you would be staking, you would get the entire amount, the entire 8%. And then if, for instance, I'm participating with 1 ETH and someone else with 2 ETH, that other person would get 2/3 of the 8%, and I would get 1/3 of this. And so you can do the same with locking tokens. So there is, okay, I stopped this on my computer. No. So there is a total of 8% distributed, right, for this category. So what your share is depends on how many other people are participating and with what amount and for how long. So this is what I'm saying. If like 2 of us would stake with the same amount for an equal amount of time, both of us would get 50% of this 8%. Clear? No. So you have 1 million in total, 1 million reputation that's distributed. So of that, 8%, and of that, your share within that category. So, and then you can obviously see if you lock tokens, ERC20 tokens rather than ETH, the likelihood to get a better share is higher, because in total 30% of tokens are given to those locking an ERC20 token. And we actually have like some really nice analysis around this already, where you can have live statistics on current distribution. So here you can see a list of different ERC20 tokens that are being locked. You have Loopring LRC, Metacartel Maker, Ocean, you have Chainlink's Link, you have Basic Attention Token, GNO, Status, Aragon's ANT, DAI, Decentraland Mana, you have 0x, DaoStack's Gen, Request Networks Rec, Raiden Networks Raiden, OMG, Kyber Network, and Bancor. And all these tokens are being staked, and you can see, okay, from the LRC token, Loopring's token has been staked the most. Metacartel's token has been staked the second most. And up here, you can actually see how many people have participated in each of the different categories, and generally how many people have participated, how much USD has been locked, and so on. Let me actually go back to the present. Reputation. Yeah. Exactly. Reputation equals your voting rights in the DAO. So this is basically the first presentation that we have listened to. Was explaining like how the governance mechanism works, that you need a reputation, and that reputation enables you to. Perfect. Yes. Yes. So that means you're not losing money, right? That's so you have. Let's just go quickly back to the interface. That there is this release button, so you decide on how long you lock the tokens for. But if you decide to lock it for a minute only, a minute later you can release it already. So these are actually token locks I had done before, and you can then, like, it tells you exactly at what point, at what date you can release it, and then you can just come back to the interface and release it. No. So you have, but I'm glad that we just talk about it, because usually, you give the presentation and you think you make it clear and people understand. It's actually good to get your questions right away. Okay, let me try to rephrase. There is a 4 weeks period during which this initial reputation, meaning initial, it can be that in the future more reputation is distributed. But to kick off this DAO, we decided, hey, let's have a total of 1 million reputation distributed to whoever would like to participate. So to decide who gets how many, we needed to come up with some sort of system. So we decided, let's have a 4 weeks period during which nobody has reputation, nobody can do anything in the DAO, but people can only stake their vote to be able to get reputation, and then in the future be able to vote on proposals. And so everyone participating now until the end of next week, they can gain reputation, and the tokens that you have staked, you just get back. And but you get on top, you get reputation, and this reputation you can keep forever, for how long ever you want to keep it for. It's pretty much exactly the list that I showed before. So because the reason is, like I mentioned, it depends on how much you are staking, right? So of course, 10 Raiden tokens are not worth the same as 10 GNO tokens, whatever. And so we need to have a price feed. And that price feed is taken from the decentralized exchange that's going to govern, the Dutch X. And for this to have a price feed, there needs to be running auctions. So the only tokens that are working for receiving reputations are the ones that are actively listed and traded on the exchange. And that's the list. So for these tokens that you have just seen, all of them have constant liquidity on the Dutch X. Do you have any more questions on this? Completely right. You can try that, and I welcome you to try it, because it's always good to stress proof test the system, right? But most likely, for one, if you stake 5,000 now, probably your share of reputation that you get is relatively minimal, and voting power is always compared to how much share you have. So and then I mean, there is a bunch of answers to this why this cannot happen actually. Or why it theoretically shouldn't happen. Again, like, super welcome to proof test that. Yeah. Excuse me? Why, you could try. but no. So basically, I think Felipe didn't go super deeply in detail of this, but it's actually the DaoStack system is a super well thought through DAO system, which is actually why we decided to partner with them. So they have a bunch of mechanisms how you can make sure that this doesn't happen. Also happy to talk in more detail later on because I have 5 minutes left and still a bunch of things that I want to explain. But basically they have something that's called holographic consensus. The DAO automatically downstakes a proposal when it's coming in. So first you need to basically upstake a proposal and make sure that a proposal gets enough interest for enough people to vote on it, for it not to be ignored. Then if you still would run the risk that it's going into the wrong direction, of course, if it's a very relevant question to the DAO, that you were most likely inclined to get more people involved of the system to participate in this. I think you're not really listening, so I might just answer that later on. Okay. So I've explained this as well. Oh wait, there's actually one more. There's also, I just explained the token lock, also on that interface. There's gen auctions that you can participate in. So if you hold gen, you can participate in an auction by spending gen. This gen you actually won't get back. And the more gen you spend compared to other people participating in this auction, the more reputation you will get. And this is actually a really good way for the DAO to have initial funding. Because of course, to then think about it, you have the DAO and you want to execute some decisions. You of course need to have some money. Because if you want to change something to the smart contract level, you need to have someone to implement it. How do you do this? You could, for instance, set up a bounty on Gitcoin. And but then of course you would have to pay for it. And so to have initial kickoff funds for the DAO, we decided that one of the ways that you can gain reputation is by participating in this bit gen auctions. So you can just buy a couple of gen and sell them in an auction and get reputation for this. I think we have more or less covered this. But again, you have a total of 1 million reputation that's distributed, and all the categories are separate. So 10% is giving to people who participate in gen auctions. So you only compete with people who also participate in these auctions, and you're not competing with people who are staking ETH or who are staking any ERC20 token. And you can participate as often as you like in all of the categories, so you're not limited to one-time participation. You can do it as many times as you like. And then finally, you get your score, obviously, if you get like X% from category locking ETH, plus X% from participating in gen auctions, then this is, of course, accumulated and increases your share and reputation. So what happens after the vote staking period? So this is actually what we have just seen before. It's the DaoStack alchemy interface. Yeah, basically, I'm not going to go into too much detail in this now, but this is where you will be able to super easily participate. You just click on submit new proposal, you click on it, and then a page opens where you can write down a description plus links to further information, and then the DAO can vote on it. So it's super easy. Just click on new proposal, fill in all the details, and then people can start voting on it. Okay, how much time do we have left? No, but then maybe then let me give 30 seconds. And then do we have time for questions? No time? Or maybe then let's just stop it here. I think it's a good cutoff point. Yeah. Give me more questions, please. Grill me. Yes. Yeah.
We got a mic now for questions. Yeah, but it's being broadcasted live from New York.
Live from Gamelne. So if I have 100 units of reputation, can I spread them out between 5 parallel projects at the same time?
If you have 100 of what? Units of reputation. So no, reputation is always dependent on the DAO. So if you get reputation in this DAO, in the dxDAO, you cannot use it for other DAOs. The reputation is always DAO specific.
So that's not incentivizing me to support 3 great projects at once, even though I have amazing reputation.
No, but what you can do is you can just, like, for instance, in the Alchemy DaoStack DAO, it's super easy to just write a proposal and just you can say, hey, look, I'm participating in the dxDAO. I have already successfully submitted this and this and this proposal. So this is basically my proof of showing you that I'm a valuable member to the community. Please give me some reputation. And then if everything goes normal, you would get reputation.
And you also mentioned for your project, you have 8% of the 1 million reputation is can be distributed, right? And there's also 10% that you can get if you auction off something.
All right.
The gen or
no, it's perfect. It's actually perfect to hear your questions because that shows exactly what is all unclear. So let me go back here. So you see this pie chart, right? And this 1 million reputation equals 100%. So that means 100,000 reputation is being given out to people who participate in GenBit auctions. How this looks like is actually here. You have in total 10 different auctions. And you can see these auctions have happened already. And this one is ongoing. And you can see for in the first auction, you had people participating and contributing 27,000 gen, and then it went down to 8,800, and here it went up again. And it's basically for each of these auctions, 1% of gen is being distributed. So here, obviously, it was much easier for you to get more reputation. So it's a little bit luck, right? If you participate in an auction where lots of people participate, or if you participate in an auction where very little people participate, because then you always compete with the same people who participate in this, and basically 10K of reputation are distributed for each of the auctions.
Yeah, but that basically means if I have more funds, I can purchase more reputation.
Yes. But with Gen, you lose it, right? Because those funds you give to the dxDAO, and then everyone who's participating in the dxDAO has a voting right on how to use these funds.
Thank you.
Sorry to interrupt,
No,
but more questions after the pause we're gonna have in about half an hour. Thank you, Anja. Thank you. Just gonna. Okay, we got our next speaker, a man who left his job in Milano, if I heard correctly. Please give it up for the man from Aragon Black, which is the most medieval name I've heard today, Daniel Shavit.
Tonight, but I don't want to talk just about Libra, but I want to kind of spread the discussion a bit more, which is about generally all the powers that are fighting not only for your attention but also control over your lives, which are, you know, the nation state, Wall Street, and the Silicon Valley companies. And so, you know, you can see Libra as kind of the attempt of the Silicon Valley data cartel to not only get control of payments but also your identity, your data. And you know, on the other side, you have Wall Street that has your credit score, it controls the money supply, and you have the government, which in effect, you know, takes money from taxes, gives you services in return, healthcare, you can get arbitration through the court system. In the Silicon Valley model, you have data-driven value-added services, so you can get your pizza 5 minutes faster. You can get commerce through eBay, etc. But in between all of those models, and you can already see them in a way, not only agreeing but also fighting between each other. So today, all of the politicians, they started freaking out about Libra, and they're pushing back and trying to say, how can we let Silicon Valley control the money supply? And it's actually quite an interesting development. So what do you do in between this trifecta of powers that tries to control you? There is a fourth way, which is the DAO. I'm not going to enter too much into the theory because Felipe talked a lot about it. But basically at Aragon, the premise is unstoppable organizations. So not only they cannot seize your funds, like with Bitcoin, but they cannot tell you what to do. You can vote autonomously. You can go through a court system that Aragon is developing. And now I will kind of illustrate this theoretical propos with some practical examples of what is happening in Aragon. Before that, I'll just give a quick introduction. So Aragon is very basically an operating system for organizations. Just like an operating system controls which applications, controls what resources in a system. Basically, Aragon has sandboxed apps, and each app can only, let's say, access the resources of another app to which it has relevant permissions. So for example, you can have a voting app, and you say this voting app can control the tokens of this token manager, and it can only do so under the conditions given by a certain oracle. So think about a UBI that would only give to you if it verifies that you have a verified identity, or let's say a subsidy or a reserve fund for farmers. If the temperature in an area went over 20 degrees Celsius and it's verified by the oracle, it gives the permission to do this. So you can create organizations that are extremely flexible, and this actually gives you the power of enabling the long tail of organizations. An organization is not just what you're allowed to do, under the traditional law, but it can take many forms, from a centralized to a very decentralized system, from a non-autonomous to very autonomous system, and from simple voting systems to things like holographic consensus. A few examples of app in Aragon: you can basically control a fund together. You can vote collectively on what is the payroll of people in your organization. You can also, for example, allocate together. So, when you have a project, usually you don't know how to allocate between different people who contributed to a project, and you kind of have to refer to a hierarchy. Here you can basically have everyone vote on everyone else's contribution, and this allows a much more democratic say on labor value, let's say. But it can also work to go against this model of Silicon Valley data. So on Aragon, they created the Aragon Drive. This is exactly like a Google Drive for an organization, and you can say, I only allow these people or this sub-DAO to access to the files or to post the files. You can allow different people to value the data or be given back some money from the use of the data. So it's a really flexible use of data within a system. There is also Alta, which is really important. It's actually a decentralized ISP, so an internet service provider. So usually, you have a problem that the internet itself, from its promise of decentralization, became very centralized over time, because the ISPs are controlled by, the governments, and they can block websites. Everyone has to use like a VPN to go around these geo-blocking features. And people have started doing mesh networks, but mesh networks don't really work because you don't have really a financial incentive to share, and people can spam your network and use all the data in it. So actually here you're creating a DAO which controls an ISP. So everyone can become a node, and they can be paid a share of the ISP from the collective ISP from the DAO. And they can vote on, what is going to be the subscription fee, who can participate in this. So it's really a positive development for the infrastructure itself on which blockchains run, which is the internet. Why? Why is it centralized? It's on Ethereum in the end. Yeah, if the endpoints get shut off, of course. So the end game would be to create, a completely decentralized constellation of satellites or whatever. Yes, of course. So in the end, basically, you have these 5-10 apps which already exist, and by the end of the year, there'll be more than 40 Aragon apps. Anybody, can come and develop an app on Aragon. I'm going to talk a bit more about how to do it later. So you have, liquid democracy, you got survey apps, you got Pando, you got the agent. So the agent is very interesting and basically means that this is the representation of your DAO to EverDApps. So you can connect, for example, agent to Compound, and you can say the DAO can, generate a loan and can loan out through its treasury and generate interest to then, have a budget for itself. And so any DAO can basically connect one of any ever apps through the permission system to the agent to an external DApp. So the DAO basically has this, Ethereum address, and it's able to be forward-facing to the outer world and not be constrained just inside of the DAO ecosystem. So I'll talk a bit about Pando, which is another project that I'm working on within Aragon. And so Pando is a distributed GitHub, and everyone says, well, GitHub is decentralized already, but not really, because actually the people who are the maintainers of any repository can control what gets pushed or not. And here, code itself basically becomes a DAO, and the pull requests are approved by the entire DAO of contributors to the code. This is really important because if you think about the economy, about 80% of the value today of, let's say, the Fortune 500 companies comes from intangible assets, which are, either brands or algorithms. And if these are in the hands of, a couple of shareholders of Google or Amazon, this is bad for all the rest of us. And the idea here is to have code that is self-controlled by not only the people who contribute to it, but, a wider range of people who could, for example, get a UBI from the profits of the algorithm that is running autonomously as a DAO. The latest app we're doing is the fundraising app. So this is a DICO app. So any DAO can basically just toggle a button and enable a bonding curve-based fundraising campaign. It's very different from a classical ICO where a project, takes the money and then can go chill in the Bahamas with the money. Here they get, so you have all the collateral, and this can be multiple collaterals. They go into this bonding curve. I'm not going to go into the rabbit hole of bonding curves, but you see the more people buy into the project, the more the value goes up. So this incentivizes people to curate and choose good projects. And each month you can have 5%, so the tap rate, that goes to fund the DAO, which is behind the project. This means that if the project doesn't deliver, people can just take out their money and the project will not get all the sum at once. So it's aligning the incentives much more between investors and people who run projects as DAOs, and it also allows projects to be DAOs from the get-go instead of running the project as a centralized company with shells in Klemen and Gibraltar and whatnot. The last thing I want to talk about is the governance of Aragon. So Aragon itself is a DAO running on top of the Aragon infrastructure, and all the money of the ICO, which was about $30 million at the time, they put it into this DAO, which is controlled by all the token holders of ANT. So there are 3 main teams: Aragon 1, Artark, and ourselves here, Aragon Black. And every quarter there is an Aragon network vote, and the token holders vote how the funds of the treasury are used. So even the founders of the project themselves, they can be fired by the DAO they created in a way. So it's really one of the first projects that is extremely decentralized. And to come back to what I said before about the apps, if you have any idea to develop an app, make an experimentation, you can go to the DAO at the network vote and you can make a proposal. And if the proposal is adopted, then you can participate in both the governance and the development of the network. So I hope you'll join the Aragon family one day, and thank you for coming. Questions?
Yeah. Does the mic work? Does it? Yeah, now it does. Here you go.
It's a really great project. One question though, what happens if the projects scale much faster than the participants, meaning that there's an abundance of projects, not enough time for everyone to process them, and then eventually it's going to become a GitHub situation where you have maybe tens of thousands of projects getting uploaded, and you need some way to administer or push some of the projects if they're of higher quality? How do you plan to tackle that?
There are two things. All right. Yeah, so there are two sides to this question. First is, how do you make the treasury of the project sustainable? So in fact, the network today only has like a tokenization model where, for example, there is going to be this Aragon court, which is going to adjudicate subjective disputes between DAOs. So a smart contract, it can read data perhaps from an oracle in the future, but it can only act on these kind of pseudo-objective data. It can really resolve, for example, our proposal, our policy for onboarding people was not respected. How do you do that? That is a very human and subjective language thing. So there's going to be a court system, and this court system is going to have people pay a fee to the court. And so through different apps that could have fees or lock-ins, you could generate treasury. So this will enable funding more projects in the future. The second part is, how do you improve the governance process not to be spammed? And so right now, actually, there is the Aragon Association, which is kind of a centralized entity, which is basically the foundation, behind the ICO. And they have a right of veto over the proposals that are put. So they can prevent, 500 proposals from coming at once. Of course, the objective is to get rid of this as fast as possible. And there are already proposals on how to do this. And so there has to be alternative mechanisms of how you will choose between proposals. One possible way is a Futarchy. So a Futarchy app is actually coming in a few months. And the Futarchy app would also enable things like, holographic consensus and Ever. Or you would have, a dot voting, like I showed, that you only have a limited number of budgets to vote, or a quadratic vote, or liquid democracy. So there are quite a few models out there, and there will have to be some experimentation on that front. But hopefully within a few years, we would be able to choose one consensus mechanism that allows filtering of proposals.
Okay, we got time for another question, but just one. Does anybody have a question? Not? Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. We now have a 10 to 11 minute pause, and then we will see each other again. We have two other speakers and then a round table. So get yourself some drinks and see you in 10 minutes.
Are we ready? Give a round of applause for yourselves, please. You came back. Come on. Yeah, people. Yeah. I think we're all ready to introduce the man who told me I should just announce about the name Peter Pan. As I said earlier, he's from Australia. Don't overhype you. Okay, I'm not going to overhype you.
The man who knows more about the new coin that Facebook put out, that Facebook themselves. Please give it up for my new friend. What? So, the mic, yeah. You told me not to put the mic too close to my face. I'm just used to things being this close to my face. I apologize. So, I give the mic over to you. Thank you.
What's up? Whoa, that's really bright. What? Sorry? Yeah, sure. Okay, cool. This is really bright, actually. Cool. So, hello. I'm Peter from Metacartel, and today I'll be talking about Metacartel DAO, right? And yeah, I guess so. We're kind of like a different DAO, I guess. And our story goes all the way back to last year, right? So like, well, Aragon and DaoStack, they've been doing a lot of work around DAOs. Within the Ethereum community, we've had several like emerging and pressing issues that we needed to take care of more immediately. Mic closer, right? Gotcha. So within the Ethereum community, we had like a lot of problems in the ecosystem that we have yet to solve, right? Like last year, it was all about like scalability, ETH 2.0. And I think like late last year, we encountered this problem of like, hey, like we actually need to really expedite ETH 2.0, right? Like in the sense that can like Ethereum become Facebook quicker than like how Facebook can become Ethereum, right? That was kind of like the theme. And as like a lot of teams who were working on like ETH 2.0 were kind of like working away, they were in a dire situation with funding, right? And it was kind of strange because like not long ago, only like in 2016, did we have the DAO, right? Where it was a DAO that went up to $250 million in total assets locked under. And like, I mean, like it went up to that valuation before it was hacked, right? But that DAO was all about like kind of supporting the Ethereum ecosystem, right? There was actually like this synergistic kind of like collaboration within the Ethereum community. And for some reason, after the DAO hack happened, right, we had the fork and everything was kind of blown apart. We never had like, ever since we never had the same cohesion within the Ethereum community as we did before, right? Like, and essentially, so yeah, like we had this issue of like, who's funding ETH 2.0, right? And if you think about it, like kind of ETH 2.0 is kind of like how Ethereum is going to scale up. It's how we can actually build valuable dApps, right? I mean, CryptoKitties back in 2017, November, it flooded the network, and it was clearly, Ethereum, at least a base layer, was unusable on a scalability note, right? And yeah, so it was like, who's going to fund ETH 2.0? And, you know, like, then that's what this tweet is about, right? Like, it was this great moment in the Ethereum community where Vitalik was like, you know, engaging in a conversation with like these researchers from ChainSafe, right? So ChainSafe is one of the ETH 2.0 teams who are building a ETH 2.0 client called Lodestar, right? And they were asking like, hey, we need some funding. And out of, you know, like, I think one of the researchers said like, hey, we need some ETH. Here's our address. Please donate, right? And out of the blue, Vitalik was just like, hey, YOLO, I'm just going to send you 1,000 ETH, right? And, you know, soon after, another team from Sydney called Sigma Prime, right? They were also ETH 2.0 development team. And he also sent them 1,000 ETH. And this went on for quite a bit of time, right? And it caused quite a bit of stir within the community. And it was quite magnificent to see how easily like 100K could just be quickly sent over to people, right? And yeah, like ever since then, you know, I guess the developers of this framework called Moloch. I'm not sure if you guys heard of Moloch DAO, but it's essentially a DAO framework that's very simple, right? Essentially means that it's a DAO framework where people pool funds together, and essentially when people pool funds together, right, they get shares, and people just vote using the shares, and basically it's a proposal-based DAO, as in funding proposals get implemented and sent in, and people just simply vote. This is basically how it works. There's no other features, no nothing. It's really bare bones, right? And essentially, they launched with the intention of solving this coordination problem. Like, how do we fund ETH 2.0, right? And the solution was, hey, let's use this DAO to collect funds from the Ethereum ecosystem to fund ETH 2.0. And it kind of worked because if ETH 2.0 never really ships, you know, the price of ETH could hypothetically go down and Ethereum could become kind of irrelevant in that sense, right? So there were actually like members of the Ethereum community that had incentive to actually fund ETH 2.0, right? It was like kind of this value system, right? That made sense. And yeah, so Moloch DAO, well, you know, recently you must have maybe heard the news of how like Vitalik and Joe Lubin and the Ethereum Foundation and Consensus sent 4,000 ETH collectively into Moloch DAO. And essentially, I feel like this was one of the biggest like validating points of like DAOs, right? It's just like how it basically showed us how easy it is to actually like create a DAO, collect and coordinate funds of this magnitude, right? And actually use these funds for a collective effort, right? And if you think about it, it's very minimal like that. And I feel like that's what made it work, right? And funny enough, like when I initially heard about the Moloch DAO framework, I kind of dismissed it, right? My friend called James Young, like we started talking about like DAOs and like UX back in like late 2018, and he was working on something called the Moloch DAO. And so he's been working on this for nearly 2 years with Amin and, you know, some other guys from Connex, right? And they've been working on this on and off for 2 years, and they finally found this solution that was going to maybe help Ethereum fund its core development, right? I kind of wrote it off because who cares? It sounded like a gimmick, right? It sounded like another DAO project that was going to like waste a lot of time. But I think, you know, like as it kind of launched up from the beginning, right, and started onboarding funds, it initially onboarded around 25 members, pulling together 200K, right, USD. And to me, that was a really interesting moment because I realized that at that point, I really got how powerful DAO frameworks were, right? and how quickly people can coordinate large amounts of capital for a certain purpose, right? This was actually like crypto and DeFi at its prime. Like it was frictionless to some extent, right? Like this would have taken a lot longer in like the fiat world. And yeah, so I tried to, when when it launched up and collected like 200K, I was like, hey, this is really cool. And I wanted to join it, right? And I was backed by Amin to join. That means like one of the core creators, right? And funny enough, like the average, like everyone from the Moloch DAO membership, right, bought in for 100 ETH. I didn't have 100 ETH because I'm poor. So I sent my proposal in. I was like, I'll help out with the DAO, right? And this was around April. Not long after, I became Moloch DAO's, Moloch DAO history's first ever rejected membership proposal, right? And yeah, so that was really fun. I was like, it was a win-win situation because I either got in and got to kind of see this governance experience happen, right, in real time, or I get rejected and make history. So I was like, hey, this is totally okay. This is, it was cool. And this was back when like Ethereum, before like Vitalik, right, and Joe Lubin at Ethereum Foundation and Consensus threw nearly like $1 million into the DAO. And afterwards, right, I talked to Amin, who was one of the creators of Moloch, right, who kind of like sponsored me to join the DAO. And we were just chatting, and it's like, why don't you go and fork Moloch DAO, right? And I'm like, that'd be sick. That'd be really funny, because I'd just be it's like redemption, right? And so yeah, I guess basically it's like, hey, you know what? You don't want me? I'm just gonna go and make my own DAO. And it was nice. I'm good friends of most of the Moloch people, right? So I don't know why I didn't get in. I so don't know. Like there's been arguments, but I don't buy it, right? Like there's politics at play. Or I just didn't have enough friends. That, right? Or ETH, yeah, that. So I mean, that's how kind of the DAO works, right? You collect funds, you pledge money in, you use the shares to actually kind of vote on things. Very simple, very minimalistic. It's very basic, very primitive, right? And I think that's why it kind of worked. It's just so simple. And so like I decided to fork it, right? And we decided to fork it and create this thing called Metacartel DAO. So you probably don't know what the hell I'm talking about. Well, this is Metacartel, right? And you probably don't know what this is. It's a dancing chili, but essentially, we wanted to fork and create this DAO called Metacartel, and we wanted to actually focus on creating a DAO and collecting funds to fund the application layer of Web 3.0 and Ethereum, right? And essentially, we just like realized this inflection point of like, hey, like none of we're seeing a lot of UX infrastructure being shipped, and it's all starting to mature, and we're also seeing like layer 2 scalability coming into fruition, right? And like 18 months ago, CryptoKitties flooded the network, and there were basically no user experience kind of solutions to help with usability onboarding. It's a completely different picture today, right? So we were like, hey, let's actually kind of like get people to use not only like this UX infrastructure, right, but to also use like the underlying protocols that were being shipped, like Maker, like Foam, right, like Freebox, right? And we had a lot of new toys. We just needed to really figure out how to build something useful with these pieces, right? And so that's kind of what the DAO is. But essentially, the Metacartel, I mean, just to give more context of why like this chili matters is essentially, Metacartel was originally not a DAO. We were actually launching a DAO, right? But originally we were just like this technical working group, right, focused on building user experience solutions, right? We were initially formed during ETH Berlin last year, and during September, right? And we were this research group full of engineers and researchers figuring out how to design this solution called metatransactions. And we basically, metatransactions, for if you don't know, essentially allows users to write to the blockchain without any gas in their wallet, right? And basically they send the transaction to a server which executes it for them instead of sending it to the blockchain, right? So this essentially lets people interact with the blockchain without any crypto. And after we kind of solved this problem in like early this year, right? Yeah, so not that long ago. Yesterday, yeah, basically, right? So we kind of solved this problem, and we were like kind of dumbstruck to what we'd actually kind of like work on. We were this bunch of like, we were this kind of meme in the Ethereum community because we had this like logo of a chili shaking this thing, shaking maracas, and it was funny because we actually did productive work. Yeah, so we created this logo in San Francisco last year, and that's when, like, I guess, like, in the whole of 2018, we kind of developed this really cool culture of, like, working on shared problems and creating shared solutions, collaborating within the ecosystem of Ethereum, and yeah, we just didn't take ourselves too seriously, right? And I guess we looked at, like, hey, we have this culture that we created, we have this community that we created, right, within Ethereum. Where can we take this, right? We've kind of overcome one challenge and already, and like and noticing the inflection point of, like, user experience and scalability on the application layer, we decided to figure out how we can foster more dApp development on Ethereum in the greater Web3, right? And yeah, so that's how and like, as I was rejected from Unlawcked DAO, and Amin was like, hey, why didn't you fork Unlawcked DAO to create Metacartel DAO? I think I made this mental, like, connection of, like, okay, that could kind of work, right? I mean, that's why I wanted to join Unlawcked DAO in the first place. I saw this experiment and it was working. And I was like, hey, why not actually run this experiment for the application layer of Ethereum and, possibly the greater Web3 ecosystem, right? And so, yeah, we forked Unlawcked DAO and we deployed our DAO contract around a week ago. And we've been just starting to onboard funds, right? We've onboarded around 300 ETH, and we have, like, a goal of, like, 1.5k ETH, around, like, 300k, like, and we'll probably hit that, like, mid-July. But essentially, I guess, like, the difference between, like, our DAO, I feel like we're part of, like, I guess the Metacartel DAO is part of this movement where, we're trying to solve a problem and we don't really care about governance, right? We're trying to do the minimal viable governance possible. And, like, I hate talking about governance. I really hate, like, talking about governance. Really hate it. Like, it's just, like, annoying, and it takes energy, and it's annoying. I don't like to think too far ahead. And I guess, we almost take on this model of, like, a benevolent dictatorship within the DAO, right? I mean, like, one thing I do need to note is that essentially, so the Unlawcked DAO, right, despite the fact that you do pool funds together, anyone can actually exit the DAO at any time and leave the DAO, right? So it's kind of value capture resistant, right, in that sense. And yeah, so I feel like, ever since kind of starting up this DAO, I've realized that 90% of, like, the work around starting up a DAO is social, and 10% is, like, technology. Like, technology is the easiest part, and that we realize that we don't really need something really that powerful. Like, Unlawcked DAO itself is, like, monumental instead. Like, these guys, like, including, like, Vitalik Joe Lubin and Consensus EF, like, all threw in nearly $1 million, like, overnight, right? And it coordinated. And to me, that's all you really need to do in the beginning. You just need to kickstart something off and start making progress, right? Rather than thinking about, hey, should we do this, do that? Think about the edge cases. Like, I think, like, the Metacartel, it's also part of the Metacartel culture in the sense that we're a bunch of application devs who don't really think about governance, right? We're kind of, like, stupid like that. We just do things. We're very dumb. Like we're not very academic or very intellectual. We're very brash in that way, right? Like, I mean, you can look. This is our humor, right? We think this is funny. Yeah. So it's a delightful chili. We have MP, who's Argentinian. She. So no. Okay. Look. But cool. Good for you. Wow. Right. Where am I? Right. So before we went into that rabbit hole, I guess, yeah, I'm just explaining, like, our attitude towards, like, creating this DAO, right? Like, we just think that, like, after kind of, like, trying to create this thing, like, I learned a lot in terms of, like, how the sausage is made, essentially, right? I realized that a lot about creating DAOs is about, like, social coordination, finding alignment, and yeah, like, you just need something really simple to kind of run with. And one thing we realized is essentially is that in the past month, I've been trying to collect funds for this DAO, right? And while everyone said yes, like like we got a lot of yeses, right? Like, yeah, I'll put in 100 ETH, I'll put in 100 ETH. And like, it's actually taking a lot more time than I expected to like onboard these funds. Mainly because you have to read this guide on how to onboard your funds into the DAO, right? Like, we don't have a front end yet, but we'll be releasing a native mobile app to kind of like run this DAO. But we realize usability is a huge factor for DAOs, not only in like onboarding, right, but to actually get this thing up and working, as well as scaling. Like, how quickly can someone like actually have funds and put it into the DAO, right? And how quickly can they understand the decision that needs to be made, right? How well can they understand the quality of the DAO? Yeah, go. Of course, obviously, we have to think about governance, right? To really scale up. We have intentions to scale up this thing and increase the member size over time, right? But I think our approach is like, let's take each step by step and make sure nothing breaks, right? And make sure that every step we take is covered in some senses, and we think about every step one step ahead. But I don't think there's much point to thinking maybe 4 or 5 steps ahead, because we're uncovering so much knowledge of how to actually coordinate and design this DAO as we go along, right? And that's why we have a team actually building out and continuing development of the Unlawcked DAO, right, framework, as well as the front end, based on like the coordinating feedback, right? We have this iterative loop, which we're trying to like close down and tighten up, right? Yeah. So like, we definitely think about it, but just we don't believe in thinking ahead too far. So we're only onboarding, like, we've onboarded around like 10 people with like 10 ETH in, and like 2 people with like 100 ETH in, and this week we're onboarding like 300-400 ETH as well. And we have a goal of like 1.5k ETH by like mid-July to end of July. And yeah, like, it's just like I said, it's been a trouble actually onboarding the funds. That's why we're like quickly deploying like these onboarding solutions. Like, we're shipping it like day by day, right? Like, working on this to get it live. Yeah. I mean, to be honest, we're just trying to like build better dApps and see more dApp experiments happen. That's our metric for success, right? We want to discover the next killer application of Ethereum. And we're focused on that. I don't think we can spend much more energy or any more of our focus on anything else. We're very insanely focused on that mission, right? Like, we're not a DAO to be a DAO. Like Metacartel DAO does not exist to be a DAO, right? Metacartel is this entire community that's using this DAO to coordinate funds, right? We use it as a coordinating mechanism. We're not a DAO. And I guess, like, yes, the ethics, like, are we doing good in this? Are we gonna be benefiting society? I mean, I don't know. Will dApps benefit society? Who knows, right? And I think those are very like philosophical questions, which again, we don't have. I don't think we. Not that we don't care, we just don't think about them a lot because we're mostly like preoccupied with like execution and just getting things done, right? And I think we'll see like these different like approaches in the DAO space take place. Like, Aragon's taking a very, very long-term vision on like betting on infrastructure, right? And building very complex and very like very complete DAOs. And DaoStack, they have their own like hypothesis. Ours is just like do stuff and make things happen as quick as they can, right? It's purely grant giving for now. And memes, yeah. People with 100 ETH. And people who can add to the DAO. Probably not. Oh, I put in 10 ETH, but like that's like a month of my living wages. So I mean, like, that hurts. But hey, I gotta have skin in the game. Oh, I'll let the DAO members decide. Do you want to be? I can make that happen.
Thank you, Peter. Do you have? Sorry, did I? Okay. Thank you. Give another round of applause for Peter, please. Where should I put this? Here. We have our last speaker before the round table begins. So She's also brought books for you all. I think that's an amazing gift. Please give it up. Please give it up for a woman that lives in Ljubljana. She lives in Ljubljana, so she would like to meet new people. I think this is a great event to do that. Please give it up for Grace Rahmani.
Thanks. I don't have slides, but I like chili, so that's good. Jojo, which is what you say if you live in Ljubljana and not somewhere else in the Balkans. I love talking about governance. And the book is it's a management book for anybody who's got an organization, just so you know what it is. And it's relevant pretty much for anyone who runs anything. And I'm not going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about the failure of the voting systems that we have now. People have been getting up here and telling you how if you have a token, you can participate in democracy. And the thing about participating in democracy, how many of you have ever voted, right? Yeah? So when you voted, have you ever looked at the ballot and said, who put these things on the ballot? Because I don't want any of them, right? Who decided Brexit, yes or no? Like, don't we have any other options? Like maybe just this law change, or I don't know. That's it, just yes or no, and only one thing, or a bunch of people. I got a booklet here in Ljubljana. It was like this thick, yeah? And it was like, here's all the things you can vote for, all the people. And like, anyway, that's the problem today when we look at DAOs. And whether it's DaoStack or Aragon, and these are all good systems, liquid democracy, they're all looking at voting. But what happens before voting? So right now we have something that says anyone can propose anything, which sounds really great, except that a lot of people have all kinds of ideas. And they might be good or bad, and then it gets overwhelming. And that's not how most organizations decide most things. So just in the same way that some of these, you're going to have many options of what kind of voting. You've got quadratic voting, and you've got one person, one vote, and you've got one token, one vote. Reputation gives you more vote. Different kinds of ways of voting. We're also going to want different ways of getting proposals on the table. And how that looks is different in in every organization. There will be different modes depending on what you're deciding. So let's just say you manufactured something and it's defective. Now you have to decide, should we recall that item? Yes or no? That's a yes or no decision, and it's a reaction to something happened. There's no initiative. It's like, oh my goodness, it's defective. Do we recall it, yes or no? That's one type of decision. It's just a yes or no. The next thing is, now that we've recalled it, how do we deal with the fact that we hurt our reputation by releasing this defect? And so that's a totally different thing. And there might be 5 different proposals on the table. Well, we could ignore it. Maybe our reputation will be okay. Well, we could do a PR stunt. Well, we could do this. And so here's an area of, we know what the problem is. Our reputation was hurt. Now the next question is, let's find a number of different ways and then pick the best way to handle that problem. And then the next question is, how do we prevent it from ever happening again? But even before we say, how do we prevent that defect from happening, we didn't even know how it happened. Where was the problem instead of finger pointing? Because if you went to a company and you said, okay, the problem is, how do we prevent this defect from happening again? The first thing you'd get is, dudes, you're sitting right here in front of me. If you were sitting back there, you can do that. Yeah, I can tell it's in something. So yeah, I got it. But, so if we're saying there's a defect, and we said, okay, everybody put on a proposal to say how we're going to prevent that from happening again, I'd be like, well, it was them. They got to fix it, and their department would blame my department, and we'd all have some other proposal about how to fix the problem that wouldn't blame ourselves. Does that make sense to people? So everybody putting in any proposal isn't going to solve that particular problem. There needs to be some research done. We need to say, how did that happen? How do we never have it again? And again, these are all reactive. But if you start to think there's other kinds of decisions, how do we plan next year's budget? Well, there's certain things that we already know go into the budget. It's based on the past, and there's a limited amount of funds, so there's a zero-sum game when we plan a budget. That's a different type of how do you get proposals on the table. And then there's how do we make a decision about what product we're going to develop or how we're going to improve our existing product. And no company does that by people throwing ideas at the wall and people going yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, in the order that those proposals arrive. That's just not how we do things. Not if you have a successful company. Now, as people, sometimes we do that, right? We're like, you know, here's an idea, let's do it yes or no. But as an organization, that's actually the most rare type of decision, is something comes in, yes or no. And so right now, we don't have a coordinated way of doing that. And I think that there are, again, going to evolve new things. Holographic consensus is one way of doing that, and it's only one way, and it's only appropriate. The major failure that we've had already is that politics has taken over this. So if you look at Dash, or you look at Aragon, it's a little bit less, but you look at any of the DAOs that they have today, very quickly there become people who are the leaders in putting in proposals. And after a while, those people always get their proposals done, they know each other, and it's just become a political system. And it's really to all of our detriment. And the other problem, of course, is then just centralization all over again. So that's where we are today. I think that if you really want to look at that process properly, you really want to look at everything starting from defining the problem you're addressing, all the way through what's the culture around discussion, incentivizing collaboration. So one of the things we have now is we incentivize competition in our society today. Everybody put in a proposal, we'll pick the best one. But what if this one has one aspect that's better than that one? We don't encourage people to collaborate. So we're always going to get inferior proposals because we encourage people to compete instead of encourage them to take ideas from one another and create the best proposal. So everything around the culture is part of that. And then you could require a certain number of proposals. We need at least 3 ideas before we vote, or whatever it is. So we're a long way from that. That can all be created inside an app. There's no reason why not. It's just much more complicated to do than voting. And I think that's why we started with voting. First of all, voting is the most visible. That's what we know. And secondly, well, technically we understand how to do that. So there's a big gap today, and it's up to any of us to fill the gap. That's all.
Thank you. But does anybody have any questions? Yeah? Okay. Well, the camera won't.
So can we fill this gap, actually? I mean, because trying to get in proposals requires this minimal amount of effort that you want to participate. And we don't want to participate even in the things that are really close to us. For example, in my apartment building, they have tenants meeting like once a month or every week or so, and I don't want to participate because it's so psychologically taxing on me that I just vote whatever the fuck you want. I don't care. I'm very malleable in that way. So can we because what you're saying is we need to include people in the process of making the decisions, but people first need to want to participate. This is what happened also in what you're saying in Aragon, in Dash, and so on. It started out nice. Everybody can participate, and still can, but it's so taxing on people psychologically that they don't want to participate.
Yeah, so there's 2 issues. So for you, it's psychologically taxing, mostly because you know those ladies who think that that's the most important meeting of the month? I don't know how I knew. But there's some people who really want to participate in that, and they really care about it. But you might have children in school, and you might really want to participate in the decision-making about your school. So one of the and then one of the issues that we're going to have to deal with if we have things we want to govern, like schools, like our homes, like our streets, we all have incentive, but we all care about different things. And so we need to create forms of democracy that are more like modular. So you get your reputation in the area of school system because you have children, and I get my reputation in the area of the technology infrastructure. And we don't have to participate in every vote or in everything, only the things we care about. Yeah. So, yeah, so like what you said was about the minimal attention tax. The real problem that we probably want to address as a community is defining money, because the big innovation in blockchain is the definition of money. And when we talk about attention, we all have a certain amount of attention, but we're getting paid for the wrong things. When we participate in our government, in the decision making, we don't get paid for it. There's some people up there who get paid for it. But there's no reason why each of us wouldn't get paid for any contribution we make to our societies, instead of paying some people over there. There's no limit on money. You can just make it, right? We figured out how to make it, and it doesn't have to be a limited supply of money. So if we just said, okay, anytime you participate in democracy, you're getting paid, and you participate in what you care about, then the incentive is built in. We create incentive by saying, if you contribute, because I know this is, we don't think about this, but everything that's for profit, not everything, but many things that are for profit are harming our society, and almost everything that's non-profit is helping society. You got to wonder what this profit thing is all about. It's just mind-boggling. So if we just changed what we think of as profit motive by redefining what money values, we would, like you said, incentivize things that we really care about. There's no reason why we don't value what we value. Yeah, but it is really, we do need to rethink. We have the technology finally to redefine what money is. So let's do it.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, now we got to the last part of this event, the round table. So we're going to probably make a sort of round table in front of the screen. Okay. We got a couple of speakers. The guy presenting the questions is going to be Gregor Žavcer. A round of applause for Gregor. And we're going to have some of our today's speakers, Felipe, Daniel, Peter, and Anna. Was that correct? We spoke about it before. Anna. Yeah, you're here. It's not Anna, but Anna. Anna, okay. So give a round of applause for our speakers tonight. Afterwards, you're welcome to hang out, to mingle, to get some connections. Thank you so far, and enjoy the questions.
All right, let's start with the final round. My name is Gregor. I come from a project called Datafund. What we deal with is transforming data into assets, but before we can do this, there's a lot of infrastructure and social consensus missing around what kind of world do we want to live in. That's why we started Fair Data Society. It's a non-profit initiative that deals with the social part and also facilitates collaboration on infrastructure that is common to us all. If you have any more questions, we can speak about this later. Okay, we have just one mic, so we will pass this one. So everybody, thank you. Welcome back. So where should we start? The first question that I really want to ask all of you is, are you a DAO maximalist? And it's a tricky question because I'm actually asking two things. Do you believe, first thing is, do you believe in a DAO that will rule all the DAOs? And the other question is, the other part of DAO maximalism is, do you think that the DAOs will change the current tradition and traditional organization forms?
All right, I just start. I will keep it short. So question number one, will there be a DAO of the DAOs? I do not believe that there's going to be one single DAO that will be in control of all the other DAOs. But I certainly believe that there's going to be DAOs that will have subordinate DAOs, that for sure. And sorry, what was the second question?
If DAO as organizational structure will replace others, as DAO as a organizational structure to rule others.
I'm sure that will exist for sure. I do not believe, again, like I'm not just having the super extreme approach where I would say that they would disrupt all different sectors and become the #1 organizational form in all different agencies. But I certainly believe that for in some visions and like for instance in social impact institutions, as one example, I can certainly imagine that there will be a DAO taking over the common organizational structure as we know it from today.
Will there be a DAO of DAOs? Don't know. Will DAOs change how organizations are structured? Yes, they've already done so, in my opinion.
Yeah, so question number one, the way it was stated, like will be a DAO of all DAOs, I don't think so. That defeats the purpose. And if that happened, Peter will probably fork it. So just like, don't even try. And then question number two is about how do we use language, right? So yes, it's already happening. It's already happened. Right now, there is a company that runs a DAO. It has legal representation in the state of Vermont. We have now the capacity of launching a blockchain-based limited liability company in the state of Vermont. And soon you're going to be able to do it at the push of a button through the DAO launcher that this company itself is developing called the D.org. And these people are now like a DAO company who has legal representation, and they met in the Genesis Alpha DAO. We're actually holding a meetup on Friday. I'm not exactly sure where to talk about this and to tell this story. The event is called Hey Devs. It's also for legal guys, so it's an informal meetup for us to tell this story deeper. But yeah, so yeah, for sure, so number two. And there's a few things that I believe that are much better run through a DAO. So a lot of the things that Grace brought up in her talk are interesting to me because I feel my intuition is that the DAO is a different type of organization, that its inherent talent is to deal with a different type of problem. It's not about trying to deal with the same problems we had before with a company on the blockchain. That's what my intuition is. So I feel like philanthropy, curation, fund managing, these are all things that a DAO could do really effectively and maybe better than their traditional versions, right? And it's up for us to build these experiments.
So emphatically, no and no. I'll just preface that I think that whatever I say after, I think DAOs are a step forward. There's a joke of Woody Allen, which is I don't go to the psychologist to be okay or good. I go to feel better, you know. So it's better than the current system. It doesn't mean that it's going to be the best. Why no? I mean, maybe there will be a DAO to rule all DAOs. That we cannot know for sure. But it would defeat the purpose, as you said, because if you have a global consensus that rules everyone, even if you fork technically, that doesn't mean that socially you're able to fork. You know, there's this whole idea of we will, you know, through blockchain bank the unbanks. Well, what if to be in the new DeFi system, you need to be chained? You need to put your identity, and if you don't agree with the system, then you are completely out of, you know, human society. I think that would be a very bad step forward to force everyone into the system. The second point about am I a maximalist? No. There is this writing by Deleuze called The Postscript on Controlled Societies, where he explains basically when you were in the rule of the church, of the politicians, of the factory worker, of the factory worker could strike and it could go against the boss. You could make a revolution and cut the head of the king, you know. But when it's a DAO and it's headless and it's a decentralized system, it's so much harder to change the rule of the game, and so it can actually be not a good thing. To be a maximalist in DAO is actually to take away people's freedom. So yes, there should be DAOs, but no, it should not rule over everything. Otherwise, it will be self-defeating.
Well, that's assuming that the point of DAO, you're making the assumption that all DAOs are supposed to be headless and censorship resilient. DAOs to me are a new way of coordinating, right? And they can take form in many different shapes and sizes with many different goals, many of which maybe they're censorship resilient to some degree because maybe if they're on the blockchain, right, that's like a state machine that's securing information which cannot be tampered with the state. But do you really necessarily need, is that necessarily a design of the DAO? Maybe yes, maybe no. I can't say, right? So I think like that's a massive assumption.
I think part of the problem lies with the imprecision of the term DAO. So that's why I started my second point. My whole talk is around it, but also I started my second point with the carefulness in which we use language. Language is a particular addiction of the human brain, but it's fairly inefficient in describing reality, right? So that's why I also, even though I'm from a different, let's say, posture, I appreciate Peter's like execution-driven point of view, and I'm glad there's people who act like that, because language in itself can be an addiction that sort of doesn't pay. It's, you know, it's like a dry hump, to use a not a bit of a vulgar thing. Like it doesn't contain anything. Life doesn't happen inside language, even though we love language so much.
Awesome, thanks. So yeah, I guess out of this maybe also comes the question: will DAOs save us all, or will they spell doom? But let's leave this now. Let's leave this for the social part. I wrote down your comment already from your talk that DAO is an imprecise word, and I couldn't agree more. So. In this spirit, the next question would be, you know, what level of a DAO are you representing? You know, it's like on a scale from 1 to 5, and 1, it would be like very harmless multi-sig, and 5 would be a Black Mirror scenario that you don't want to see in reality.
Do you mean, are we representing as the DAOs that we're currently working on, or like what we believe the risk of them is, or what we believe the risk of DAOs in general could be?
Well, you can just give your interpretation. It's a little bit of a trolling question. I admit it's, you know, I'm criticizing that the word DAO is not precise, and the question was far less precise. That was kind of the point. But okay, to maybe just elaborate a little bit. Yeah, we actually had this discussion in 2016 with Matan already, that there should be actually a classification of DAOs, because when we speak about DAOs, it's like it can mean, yeah, like I said, from a multi-sig to all kinds of different things. And there we have Anja. Anja is also part of Datafund and Fair Data Society, and she's actually starting to ask these questions louder. So this is actually a public call to all the projects to maybe join the discussion. So now, let's say if we put less of dystopia and more just for people to understand, from if we say that 1 is very basic automation, a multi-sig, and 5 is the completely autonomous, maybe even smart DAO, where would you say you are now, and where would you like to end up?
So in my naive, I'm probably the most naive blockchain participant in the panel. So you can see me as a canary in the mine. When I start freaking out, like I'll probably start freaking out before anyone else. One. Second, I think I would call for diversity. I want us to try everything out. I don't want to. I think excessive consensus starts to hinder learning. Like we have to have space to disagree and work together. And so ideally, that's like productive conflict is my jam. I'm a facilitator. That's what I do. Facilitators are conflict DJs. Like we need more conflict here. We need less conflict here. That's what a facilitator does. So from my point of view, I feel like we are 1.5 right now. There's still a lot to learn and to be developed so we can get towards a 5, and also a lot to be learned and developed so we can protect against the malicious versions of a 5, right? And yeah, so in terms of taxonomy, we can see like we have this friend who's a researcher, who's a really smart guy, Vasim, and he's amazing, and he's starting to intuit into a 3-dimensional space of a taxonomy, which decentralization is one, autonomy is one, and like organization is one. And he hasn't really finished, so just keep an eye out for this guy, Vasim Osindi. He's in the book, and now he's creating one for tokens. So he's assessing security, blah 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 blah, and creating this 3-dimensional assessment space for things. And I think asking questions and getting frustrated is the best methodology we have right now to deal with the problem. But I think there's these directions, right? There's distribution, there's automation, and then there is organism versus organization, which is like membrane permeability. And like I think our reflections have to go in that direction. And I bet Daniel has something to say.
Would you stake some gin on it? I always do that. Right. No, so yeah, so I think like technology is always more social than it is technical, and in this case, we can always hope for the best and prepare for the worst. All right. I'm actually at a 5 of like badness, but it's not because of the human effect. It's actually because of the 5 represents like the Skynet, let's say, Skynet. So like kind of an autonomous DAO that is an AI DAO that basically has been programmed to just gather the most data, get the most valuation for itself, and because it's unstoppable, it will just do its best to go there. And for all of humanity, kind of we know we're transitioning towards this new AI stage. We're kind of started from God made man in his image to man made God in his image, and now it's kind of God made the robot that is building itself in the image of man. So I don't know. It depends whether you see AI as a good or a bad thing, I guess. But I really see it going as like basically the Matrix kind of. So because it's on a DAO, it's unstoppable, and we better do our best to be sure that even though it's autonomous, it will still have a good intention from our biological unit perspective.
I don't know, like how many DAOs how many meaningful, significant DAOs are even live right now? And can we even really begin to classify them? Well, basically, Ethereum came out maybe under 4 years ago, and we've only really taken Ethereum seriously for the last 2. We're only beginning to see experiments ship. I think like I agree with Daniel's sentiment, right? Like we can just like try our best right now and hope for the best, right? And then hopefully we don't end up with a world that's fucked up. As for the Metacartel, I mean, we're very simple. We're basically a multi-sig DAO, right? But ideally, we actually end up existing beyond just like this multi-sig with funds. Ideally, we become a meme, right? A meme to me is like the ultimate form of like a DAO, which is an idea that aligns people, and people automatically know what to do, how to belong to it, right? I don't know. Like we eventually want to end up like a church. Like an idea, right? It's hard to kill an idea.
Yeah, I think for me also the scale doesn't necessarily work out so well, because you basically said number 1 is a multi-signature DAO, right? And then number 5 is this like super malicious scenario. Okay. Okay, but that doesn't necessarily is the same as being super malicious, right? So in that sense, yeah, we are definitely in the development stage. We are not super far yet, but we are also above the very initial phase, and we have seen different experiments, and we need those experiments to actually move ahead and create something that is meaningful and that can contribute to society. And exactly having malicious DAOs is part of this, because only by seeing what can go wrong, we can avoid this to avoid this to the full extent, right? Because there will always be a creative way to maybe take advantage of a DAO unless we see it before we actually create it. And it's good to play around with the system on a small scale now that it cannot basically inflict any harm or any big harm. And yeah, I would, but even, yeah, with the DAOs that are existing of today already, I guess you could already submit malicious proposals, that for sure. And this just proof case that will be a very good testing ground for how rich the system is that we are using, the government system of this DAO. That's basically what I mentioned before when someone said, oh, but if I have a lot of reputation, can I just make this DAO evil? And this is exactly what we need to showcase, that there is not a way for people to make a DAO evil and turn it into something evil, or if so, to have some coping mechanisms with it. So we definitely have to try. And yeah, we will see what happens. But right now, we are definitely still at the early stage, but just having this Year of the DAO, which is also the name of this meetup, just shows how big this topic is right now. And you can see so many different DAOs popping up. You saw the DaoStack interface with like 9 different DAOs already, and there's constantly more new ones being added. So and it's not just something that we experiment in Europe, but it's something that's experimented almost worldwide right now. And and they all cover so many different topics, and it's certainly above the stage of multi-signature already right now. So it's just very exciting to see where the journey goes. And I guess, yeah, we have to really proof test them and to make sure that they can be meaningful in the future.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, again, yeah, I agree. You know, it's maybe just not so much. I wouldn't take so lightly Peter's words. You know, like hopefully we don't end up in a fucked up world. That could be quite messy. But yeah. True. And also like Daniel, also like you said, you know, like that it's social, and we will get back to this hopefully later. But first maybe just a little bit of clarification. We had great talks today, and for those who maybe just came today to wonder what is a DAO, you know, and we in the blockchain space, we have a lot of these fancy also words, or we sometimes apps are not cool for us. We use dApps sometimes, and this line maybe also gets blurry. So are DAOs just for voting? Probably no, you know. And today you didn't have time to go through all the things, but one of the really exciting things that Gnosis is doing and was releasing before is the Dutch X. So maybe if you can just shortly explain what Dutch X is. And there's also a question, is it a DAO also, or is it a dApp? And where do you see the difference?
Perfect. Who of you knows what the Dutch X is? Okay, perfect. So it's a decentralized exchange that was built by Gnosis, and there's plenty of different decentralized exchanges obviously out there already. The reason why we decided on building yet another one was because we felt that there's certain niches that are not being covered by decentralized exchanges. So we have a very unique mechanism that we're using on this Dutch exchange. We are combining Dutch auctions, hence the name, with batched auctions. So just quick wrap up of what Dutch auctions are. You know, with the traditional auctions, you start at a low price and people like keep betting, like keep submitting their votes until like only one person is like willing to pay that and nobody is willing to pay more. So Dutch auctions work the other way around. You start at a high price and the price lowers over time until basically someone is willing to pay that money to obtain the good. And we combine that with batch auctions, meaning if you want to sell, let's say, 10 ETH for, okay, the numbers are random now, but if you want to sell 10 ETH for 1K worth of USD, then basically you start at 1K and nobody wants to say, everyone says it's too expensive, so then the price drops, and only when enough people are there to willing to buy off the entire volume that's in the auction, then the auction is cleared. So this is a very, well, it's not a new mechanism. You've seen a couple of ICOs sort of using a similar mechanism, but it's new to use it as an exchange. And what it is certainly good for is basically for tokens that are low liquid, because you always, an auction only starts at a certain parameter. So it's currently set to auctions only starting when there is a volume of 1K in the auction. However, this is something that can be changed and adjusted, which is something that the DAO will be decided on. You know, if you join the DAO, this is exactly one of the things you can decide on and govern. And so basically, and so this is one, and it's also very good for large volume sales. So what we did, for instance, we had to showcase that it's good for high volume sales. We had 10 auctions with each auctioning of 100K worth of DAI, and the slippage was less than 1%. So really, and this is something for a decentralized exchange, which is pretty special. And there's lots of other benefits, but to not take too much time now, basically we decided we want this to be entirely decentralized, because we want this to tap into a global liquidity pool and everyone being able to build on top and be aware, make sure, have the trust into the system that Gnosis, as the people who build the exchange, are not suddenly changing the rules and, for instance, asking for a 10% fee. Because then if you build on top of it and then suddenly all the liquidity is going because we changed the rules, you have some risk associated with that. Which is why we decided, hey, let's make it fully decentralized and let's give power to those who are actually using the exchange, who are actually traders who, for whatever reason, are interested in a Dutch exchange and building on top of it. And yeah, that was basically the reason why we decided, okay, Gnosis hands off. We build it because we believe it's a truly unique, very interesting way for making exchanges of cryptocurrency decentralized. But in the end, we don't want to take ownership of this, but we want everyone who is using this exchange to be able to decide on those mechanisms. So, like we just decided, one is how much volume needs to be in an auction for the auction to start. Or is there going to be any fees? And if there are fees, what do we want to use the fees of? For instance, someone of you could submit, if you're a participant of the DAO, you could just say, hey, let's submit a proposal. The DAO needs funding. Let's take a 1% fee on each trade that's being done, and let's use this as funding for our DAO to keep building new things around this DAO. Let's extend this. Let's not have this only govern a decentralized exchange, but maybe let's include other things that we want to govern as well. And yeah, what did you have? You had a second question, right? Oh, so it's a DAO. So it's a decentralized exchange. And for me, basically, it's so the DEX, the decentralized exchange, is a DApp, but it has a governing mechanism, and it's a DAO. And I mean, for me, maybe I misunderstand the wording, but for me, a DAO is also, well, the DAO is governing a DApp. That's it. Yeah, that's the answer.
All right. So great. So you put out the governing element, governance. Let's talk about this. Peter loves to talk about this. Peter. Yeah. No, I'm just kidding a bit. I think, regarding governance, we actually spoke a lot. Every conference has a couple of talks and panels on governance, and I think we all know that it will just cut into our time. And Peter, no governance, no worries. But I would say, one other question. Like DAOs are quite, we look at them, and a lot of people I've met in the blockchain space, they they go for the mantra, code is law and stuff like that, you know, and basically we don't trust the humans, we should have the machines do the job, you know, trust this environment, etc. So in creating the DAOs, do you believe values play a role or they don't play a role? And if they play a role, in what kind of way? When are they important or not?
They do, but I just talked, so I'm gonna.
Let's do different this time.
Yeah, I mean, I really feel for Peter because I have to deal all day with people who want to like just talk governance, and like at one point you're like, come on, let's do something, you know? But I also think it's not, I don't agree with like completely we can deny governance, because then you just enter into, you know, a Silicon Valley mentality of like, let's break things fast and then, you know, see later what happens and make, yeah, well, that's another discussion. But yeah, so, sorry, what was the, about, sorry? Yeah, okay, so should it be a DAO or not and stuff. So, there's a lot of, well, let's say there is often an emphasis on, let's say, a unilateralization of these things. So like, we need to have like a DAO with democracy, or we need to have a purely, you know, skin in the game kind of system. And I feel like it's a bit of a distractive kind of discussion. So often people say like, you know, Aragon is not a democracy, or Metacartel is not a democracy. But actually, you know, there are situations in which you don't need democracy. There are other situations in which if you deny democracy, then you are denying human people like the right to, you know, be involved in a system. So it's really not about like should there be or should there not be. It's about creating that taxonomy and actually evaluating for each use case, is this the relevant mechanism to use or not?
Yeah, trying to stick to the wording of the question again. I think often the values are always there, independently of the level of awareness that the proposers of the system have, that the values that are running under it. Recently we were in Split, we met this very amazing guy, but his contextual life embedded in him a certain set of values and contextual possibilities. And as soon as my workshop started, we were like commons, because they're building a DAO to govern the commons. And the guy is just like, what is the commons? And that was a question I'm ready to answer, but I was not expecting it. And I didn't make fun of him. And we just sat down and it was like, the commons are things that we all share, blah, blah, blah. So values are extractable from the consequence. Like you can see what happened and you can see what values led to that outcome. Or you can start with values, you can start with purpose, etc. We are now again in the realm where it's the edge of the efficacy of language. It starts to break down. And yes, you cannot strip yourself away from values. Values have, like, it's a Durkheim discussion. Like and so these questions that are faced, I don't mean to say it in a negative way, but they're phrased in a yes or no answer. But in the end of the day, they're poetic questions that demand poetic answers. So I challenge you to work in a valueless way, and I will be there to watch and support your identity crisis.
Yeah, I think like values matter quite a bit. Like that's what, you know, we kind of see Metacartel as being like, I mean, like a big factor of the Metacartel is that you kind of see the code itself as just being like this mechanism that helps us coordinate, right? And we want to actually evolve this like on-chain code over time, and we're going to use different means, like Daniel said. Like there's a lot of tools out there that helps us find consensus to get to achieve certain things. You know, we just want to get there, right? And I think that, yeah, like values matter quite a bit. Yeah, it's an interesting question.
I think generally say in the Ethereum space in general, values matter a lot, and this is also what is driving Ethereum, or what is so strong about Ethereum, that people more or less all follow, like in the broader sense, follow all the same values, and everything is open source, and people try to collaborate and to support each other and to really move forward this technology. And so I actually see, I personally believe values matter a lot, and this is why I believe so strongly in Ethereum, because I see how people who contribute to Ethereum also believe that that values matter so much, and they all pull together on the same thing to make this happen and actually move this forward.
Yeah, I agree. I asked this basically because, in a sense, when we speak about governance, and if somebody mentions the governance crisis in Ethereum, in a sense, it's a lot of times the origin of the problem is that basically the game was not defined enough before we started to play. Okay, we are actually running out of time. That's probably one of the most often phrases in panels. So that cliche I will add complement with another one, and then we go to ask the public. It's if you can just quickly say the third cliche for panels. If you can just quickly explain, where do you see the biggest challenges in the future in developing DAOs, in DAOs crossing the chasm and becoming basically something that changes society and it's part of mainstream?
One big challenge definitely is the legal environment, because that hasn't been classified yet, how generally what DAOs can legally be dealt with. So I think this is the one big step, and the second big step is to get more people involved. I guess active involvement in the governance process of DAOs.
I think usability and user experience will be the key to unlocking the power of DAOs and scaling them up, 100,000 plus people, absurd, we have these absurd vision of DAOs, of thousands and thousands of people. I think we can achieve them if we get that front end down, right?
To avoid repetition, I'm going to go in another direction and I think one of the biggest challenges will be understanding what it means to be a person that belongs and collaborates to several organizations in parallel, and re-understanding the being and belonging as a creator in the DAO space. That it will be a challenge that we have to face together, and coping with the amount of information necessary to be effective in such a system.
I think you already said the three main points. Maybe just to reconnect to the previous question on values, so like a personal anecdote. It's been maybe 10 or 15 years, when you ask me what you want to do in life, I said actually I want to have access to a lot of money, not have a lot of money, but have access to put people in a warehouse. That was my crazy idea. And there will be a huge warehouse, and we will divide it in 100 units, and each of those units there will be different initial conditions. And after that we will see which one has the best effect. And actually DAOs is kind of recreating this, because it's allowing you to make these kind of anthropological experiments without having to have recourse to war or revolution every time you're going to change the system. But there is, of course, a limitation to this. And the limitation to experimentation and empirical governance, let's say, is the universality of humanity, that we all have inside of us shared, good things and bad things, and that no matter what tool you build, we will always be constrained by our human nature, if there is such a thing as a human nature. So that's probably the biggest challenge to, this utopian version of governance.
Let me just add a clearer version of what I said, because so between heaven and hell, that Danny just the heaven and hell embedded in our natures, we also have the only truly scarce resource of all, which is human attention, right? So in a zero margin economy where we're dealing with non-physical goods, we still will always deal with the limitation of human attention and capacity of coping and processing information. So that's just a clearer version of what I said before.
This is all assuming DAOs are all supposed to be good. I'm waiting for evil DAOs to come out, bully DAO or evil DAO or murder DAO. I think we're gonna see them eventually come out, and usability is still gonna matter there.
Yeah, there was, I think, last year or something like that. There was a proposal. One of the if not the only ICO on Ethereum Classic, was Dark DAO. I think people didn't contribute because they had to KYC. No, the KYC I think wasn't the problem, but still people were kind of. I'm tickled by the idea, you know, but what if then my address ends up on the assassination market just by mistake because, you know, some developer didn't adjust some padding or something, you know, and then Metacartel comes and you're done. So, yeah. Okay. So, yeah, new definition of skin in the game. So, let's have this Black Mirror part, you know, let's let it be the conclusion of the panel. Are there any questions from the audience? Anybody? Okay, first question in the back, then we ask the Binance guy.
Thanks. Thanks for the nice panel. Quite philosophical one. I have more of a question from practice. So hi, I'm Nick. I'm a member of the executive board of the Croatian Blockchain Association, and we'd like to build a DAO. So which one should we choose? Aragon or DaoStack? Let's start with Anne. Why did you choose the one you did? Then let's go to David and tell her why she's wrong. And then maybe Felipe can try to persuade us to use his one.
All right, so we got quite a bit of social engineering here for on stage. Okay.
Okay, so just to say that we definitely have good relationships with both projects, with DaoStack and Aragon. Basically, we did believe, though, that the DaoStack model is very rigid, very good for scaling. They have built in some, we believe, very strong mechanisms. One of them is that, imagine, like it's different if you have only 10 proposals per week. Then for people who are part of this DAO, it's very easy for them to scan through them and see what's currently up, what they should be voting on. But now imagine the DAO is growing and suddenly you have 1,000 people members and suddenly each day you get 20, 30, 50 proposals. At some point, the normal DAO member is not going to be willing anymore to scan through them. And then people can also harm the DAO by just submitting a bunch of very unimportant proposals. So what the DaoStack mechanism does is it automatically down boosts a proposal what is coming in. So it puts money on a proposal for not being looked at, basically, which incentivizes people who do have the time to actually go through the proposals and check which one is relevant for this DAO. And then they can make money by up boosting the proposal. And this way, this is a really, really good mechanism how, for those people who do not have time to go through the new incoming proposals, will always only look at the proposals that are actually very relevant for the DAO. And then if someone is up boosting a proposal that's not relevant for the DAO, then he's actually losing money. And so this is one. And the second thing, which I find Redeem extremely, extremely relevant, is that I think we have actually seen that in the Aragon DAO. Correct me if I'm wrong, but there was a proposal that was submitted, and then in the very last moment, a major shareholder was changing the outcome of the proposal, and then it was too late for other people to change the outcome. So what happens with the DaoStack mechanism is that if in the last 24 hours, before the proposal is supposed to end, suddenly the outcome of the vote is changing to the opposite, then the voting time is extended to an additional, I think, 24 hours. Is that right? and then it goes on. So if it's changed again, that it continues and continues until enough people, until there is for a longer period of time a decision that this is actually the outcome as it should be. And for those reasons, we believe that for scaling a large-scale DAO, this is actually very, very well working concept.
Yeah, I mean, I work for both like DaoStack and Aragon, and personally, I have 50 to 100 reasons, and I could go for them, but I'm not very interested in making this comparison of A to B. I would invite you to try both of them actually, because it doesn't cost much to do it. Why a project would use Aragon, I would say, is because you have a huge modularity in the infrastructure. You have a permission system that is very powerful and that really allows you to create like a tailored DAO to your use case. Holographic consensus and the 24-hour vote extension is very interesting. It's an ongoing experiment, and we'll see if it works. And I hope it works. And I have a lot of respect for Matan and the research he made. It's really great, but I think it's also something that can be replicated in Aragon. I won't do it because I have better things to do, but there is basically Fruitarchy that is coming. Also, Martin gave a grant to help towards that. So there is also this. The main thing is that it's kind of the standard, and there is a huge ecosystem of apps that you can plug into. And I think that going in the future, having that base infrastructure and having a way to plug into many different apps that people are developing is going to really leverage the possibilities in there. Just a correction, like the thing about the 24-hour extension, the problem in Aragon. So there are many benefits and also disadvantages to the governance of the Aragon DAO right now. But the governance of the Aragon DAO right now is not the governance of any DAO in Aragon. Any DAO that you make in Aragon can have any governance or consensus mechanism that you want. So it's really up to the user to use all protocols, evaluate which one is best for them, I think.
Yeah, so start to build on what Daniel said. There's a difference in the sense that DaoStack is a coherent team, specific team, a company working a normal way that a company works. And Aragon has this meta governance layer, which is somewhat decentralized. It also has a slight plutocratic issue, like a vote with tokens. So that's a thing you have to think about. In terms of functionality, both companies or both groups could actually rip each other off immediately. Like Aragon can have, we can actually just have all the functionalities of Aragon. Aragon can have all the functionalities of DaoStack.
I think that like between DaoStack and Aragon, the people share like 99% of the vision. And if there wasn't this thing called like a different token, there would not be like this whatever shit.
So me and Daniel are very much of this vision. So in the end, it's more what process you're more comfortable going through. And I would say that Aragon, what would make me uncomfortable if I was in your position is that the governance, this meta layer governance can change the rules with a sort of a slight plutocracy thing going on. Which in DaoStack you're basically engaging with a normal company, and you can get them to promise stuff. If they break the promise, you just leave or whatever. So it's less risk exposure, and everything else is reputation based and a little bit more transparent. But what I feel like asking you is like, what are the parameters of your DAO? I'm not going to ask, so I would just say, if you are like hackers that want to play with every knob and twist and thing and by yourselves without having to interact with programmers and just doing it alone, this could be the case for Aragon, sort of iOS kind of a metaphor. If you have like a vision of what you want and you can describe it and you want to ship it off to a team to deploy it, definitely go with DaoStack. And you can reach out to me, I can help. As long as you deal with those three things that I said, which is a shared value, mission. Because of what you said, like the lack of a shared vision in the beginning might be the problem. I don't have a problem with that personally, but in DaoStack now for the DAOs we launch, because they are overhead, we're taking care of you after you launch. So in the end, we want you to have a orchestrated shared vision. We want you to have a resource or amount of resources to manage, especially better if it's a monthly income. And we want to have a defined group of initiators that desires to grow dramatically. So if these three things are in place, I would go with DaoStack. And yeah.
Different frameworks enable different sorts of coordination, right? I think since I wouldn't even dive into the details of the technical implementation. We've already yes, DAOs are 90% social. Why are you comparing technical implementations? That's so stupid to me. And we should be sure, but we can, like I said, you can change the code and you can develop the DAO over time. Yeah, right, exactly. You shouldn't compare them as cars, right? You should, if you're looking to build a DAO, you should look at what DAOs exist right now, what DAOs are doing meaningful work, what DAOs kind of work, what DAOs have enabled coordination to the certain extent that you want to have happen, and that's the reason why we chose Unlawcked DAO. We saw it work. We want to do this. We want to enable the same sort of coordination. That's why we chose Unlawcked DAO.
All right. Well, it's like the question was how to get started, and I would actually draw upon the knowledge from today. I would say we should get started with your canvas.
This is ground zero of this project. I'm working now on web seminars for this. This is my excuse of continuation of employment with DaoStack. Please support that idea. And so having it decentralized in a way that's online and people can go. So there's I'm working on a 4-chapter structure. Let's hope that soon that will be implemented. I hope that by September we'll see the first couple of them. But also I can send you the canvas. You can do it yourself. I can come over. Yeah, just kind of just try. I don't want to sell that brand, man.
So I just decided that maybe what we'll do, we'll just pivot and we'll fork Aragon and we'll fork DaoStack and we'll call it Metacartel, and that's it. So yeah, maybe just yeah. So maybe from the other side, we actually plan to use both DaoStack and Aragon solutions because it's different use cases and really depends on what you want to do. Like Peter said, different governing principles. Second question.
Again, no relation to Binance. So no, I actually want to talk a little bit about financial incentives. We've heard about Peter not being able to participate because he's poor. Buying reputation tokens, on-chain transactions still cost money. It's still not something that we could be. It couldn't be applicable to a nation state or something like that, right? So and partly also of the UX. So my question is, it's really broad, right? You can talk about just user experience from me and you, or you could talk about possible attack vectors from somebody like Bill Gates, right, who comes in with billions of cash. What's going to happen? I don't have enough insight to be debating this, but it would be good to hear your perspective on this.
Who goes first?
So Unlawcked DAO and Metacartel DAO, right? With basically every member who wants to join needs to be voted in. If there's an attack, if it's a clear attack, then they can just get rejected. If it's passed and it is not seen as an attack, then I guess.
Yeah, you can slash a DaoStack DAO, it's relatively well shielded from that sort of attack that you're mentioning because, yeah, there's identity verification. Every DAO is free to sort of design their own protocols for onboarding people. And reputation is non-fungible, so it's stuck to a wallet. Ideally, your wallet is representing who you are. So Sybil attacks are really hard to do. 51% attacks are only possible through cartelling and getting people to agree. So if people agreed, it's kind of what the DAO wants to do. So in this case, DaoStack DAOs are really, really non-vulnerable, and the only way to do this with Aragon is to take over the whole governance mechanism with a lot of. So it's really expensive to do it. Maybe it's not worth it to do it.
I mean, it's a shared problem on all the protocols, right? So in Aragon right now, it was one of the first, actually the first kind of DAO who made an ICO, and the proposal was very ambitious at the time, which was we'll give you governance rights, and that it was a success was already like a surprise and an achievement in itself. But of course, maybe today we should go beyond this. In Moloch and Metacartel, for me, it's a big problem, that 100 ETH limit, really. And in DaoStack, you know, one of the reasons that really attracted me to DaoStack at the start was that people who would be closer to the decisions would get more reputation. There was a point a bit before dxDAO where Matan started introducing the idea of like, yeah, you can start using money by staking to get reputation. And I mean, that, for me, that was one of the breaking points. But it's really a shared problem between all the protocols. And yeah, I think just, you know, money's a bitch and we'll have to get over this over time. And we just got to experiment with alternative ways, really.
Yeah, like back in the olden days, 5 months ago, me and Daniel had the highest reputations of the Genesis Alpha DAO, right? I had 3%, he had 2.9%. And so he was there since the very beginning. He knew everybody, etc. And I'm just a Mexican who showed up and started doing crap, right? So that's something that happens in DaoStack, like, you know. And one of the stuff that I did is like a video, a painting, a framework that nobody supported, kinda, and it was like weird at the time. So it's very open, you know. I enjoy it, and yes, this discussion about reputation being for sale is coming up again with the beta, and there's validity to both sides of the discussion. And I definitely would say, like, if I told you guys to put 8% of your mind share into DAO space at minimum, put 3% of that mind share into the upcoming discussion of like reputation for tokens, which it's a relevant discussion for both projects, right? And also keep your eyes open for like whatever's going to come next. I think we should have 15 DAO companies. I hope nobody fires me for saying this. I think we should have 15 DAO companies, you know, not 2, not 3.
Well, everything that has been said is just one thing that also came to my mind to add from a legal perspective. Imagine that you are a stakeholder of a DAO, and the DAO is actually doing a harmful decision that you voted against with, but still you're the minority and voted against it, but still you're part of this DAO. Again, this is like legally still not entirely clear territory, but you should try to distance yourself from the decision as much as you can in that case. And we have talked about how reputation is non-transferable. So it's very highly recommendable that if you participate in a DAO, that you do it with a multi-signature wallet, because this way you can really change the owners and make sure that you don't have access to that reputation anymore. And yeah, just if you participate, use a multi-sig wallet as the Gnosis Safe, for example. That leads me to one last additional point, because you have said that, for instance, some people don't want to pay gas or do not want to constantly pay gas costs and so on. Making a little side comment here. Again, if you use the Gnosis Safe, you can basically pay for gas costs with OWL, and OWL is a coupon token that is generated when you stake GNO. So then you have zero cost associated with paying gas. Just on a side note. Thank you.
Okay, we maxed out our time by a lot. So, any more questions? No? Later. Okay, thank you very much.